Steve, what's going on today?
Hey guys.
Hello.
Steve, how's it going, my friend?
Yes. It's going good. Hello,
Good.
hello.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
You know, it was a happy Monday. For as far as Mondays go, very interesting Monday in the market. Of course, got some really cool, interesting stuff to show you guys. But before we get into all of that, I just want to say welcome and once again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to come and hear what Mr. Steve and I have to say. So, June 19th, let's do this. We want to make everybody aware that everything that we share with you here today is for educational purposes only. If you do need investment advice, please seek out a registered investment advisor or a broker or whatever might fit your need. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this is for educational purposes only and it's not a solicitation to buy or sell securities or anything else. Before we get going here, and for those of you who attend this webinar on a regular basis, bear with us here just for a second while we kind of give the new people an idea about the community that we have centered around the award-winning technology that we so proudly offer and continue to develop. So the Traders Room is really where it all starts. It's moderated by Barry Anderson. It's open 30 minutes before the market. And the good thing about the trading room, or one of the good things about it, I should say, because Lord knows there are many good things about that environment, it's free. You don't even have to be a Trade Ideas subscriber to sign up and participate. So keep that in mind. Of course, today being Monday, it's myself with Steve Gomez riding shotgun. Tomorrow, Steve takes the helm and has Mr. Andy Lindloff riding shotgun with him. Change it up a little bit on Wednesdays, and we bring in the CEO and the CTO, Dan Merkin and Brad Williams, always entertaining, and then Andy rounds it out on Thursdays with the Trading Studio, and I ride shotgun. And of course, that brings us to the pretty new Friday support session, which is a 3-hour come one, come all, ask any type of question. Well, I say any type. There's a couple things we don't cover in there. But for the most part, it's trade ideas, whatever you need taken care of, with the exception of, say, Brokerage Plus and some of the higher functionalities. So that's every Friday from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern. So be aware of that. Take advantage of that. All righty. On to the fun stuff. Steve, I guess it's time for you. You ready to take the baton and show us what's happening?
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, let's share my screen. Mike C was having trouble viewing your screen, but I saw your screen. Actually, did you even start your screen? I don't know if you did. Yeah, you did, because we saw the slideshow. I don't know, Mike C, hopefully you can see mine. Hopefully everybody can see mine now. And what I'm going to do is talk briefly about the major market. And we're going to start with the spiders. And why did that not show? So I'm going to turn off my crosshairs. I'm going to grab this. Trend line and pop that out a little bit there. And here we go. S&P spiders. And the congestion that we had last week was a couple of scary days, a couple of recovery days. And then Friday, we put in this bottoming tail wick. You know, again, I'm going to call it a bottoming tail after the fact, because over the weekend we had no major news, big gap up, and just a slow bleed higher. So what that means for the most part is that we are very, very close to breaking out here. Let's just draw some new lines. There's our new bogey, our new target for new highs in the SPY. QQQs, interestingly enough, Andy pointed this out to me last week, that they are still riding on their nicely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touches for the most part on this particular trend line. So again, the trend line for the Qs are holding up. Now, we recall back in this area and back as we're making highs, we, we're talking about the Qs being full-on leadership role. Technology, technology. Everybody wants technology. And then it was just a matter of time before the price of technology inched out too far on the branch, and the branch broke pretty hard 2 Fridays ago on a couple of comments too from Goldman talking about technology getting pretty rich at these levels. And so I said it's like plucking a string. You know, we plucked it and let it go, and now it's just kind of boing, 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 back and forth trying to find its center. But no longer are the Qs in the leadership position. The baton has been handed off to the Dow. The Dow, the DIA diamonds signify the Dow, and this is what's going on over there in the Dow. And so now the baton has been handed for leadership over to the Dow. And I want to back up to last Tuesday. If anybody was in our webinar last Tuesday, I don't know if you recall, but we came through and we went and looked at a lot of these sectors. And we pulled about 3 or 4 out of the handful that said we really need to keep our eye on. Well, one of them was healthcare, XLV. Take a look at that chart. Brand new high, XLV, definitely moving higher. The XLI, a component of industrial type stocks, they're doing well. XLF, also mentioned, holding up well. So that's where the rotation has been really occurring. There's definitely a financial component in the SPY, but the Dow pretty much, you know, has it all. It's got healthcare, it's got financials, and it's got industrials. So it appears that the Dow is back in the leadership role and made a all-time new high today, which is cool. I also want to talk about the IWM. I mentioned over the weekend that rotation could also come into this IWM. We've been going sideways for months on end, but now really a nice bottoming tail right there, and then blast us off into this secondary level range. And what do you know? We're out of this secondary range that we've been working on. Not too many times have we been able to close above this orange line. Well, today we closed above this orange line, and I still think that if everything, you know, the coast remains clear and the market continues to be bought, that we need to watch the small caps, the Russell 2000, because they might start to come into favor, however you want to put that, going forward. So, you know, my big takeaway again is that, you know, technology is still trying to recover, had a nice day today, nice bounce off of that technical support trend line, but it's no longer in the leadership role. We're back in the leadership role with the industrials, with XLV, healthcare, and XLF financials and things like that. But keep a close eye on those Russell 2000 stocks. If the IWM, let's just go ahead and mark it up right now. I'm going to create a price alert. I'm going to call IWM all-time highs. I'd like to know about that. And if that alert goes off, then what we got to do is we got to start shifting our cap, looking for some small cap stuff, because rotation could be coming quickly into the small cap stuff, which is primarily what this IWM tracks. So it's been a laggard the whole way along, but it's not rolling over. It's looking like it might want to start and play catch up. So that's all I've got. I think of any value that I could see that's changed over the last few days in the market. Anything you wanted to add?
You pretty much encapsulated it well, Steve.
Okay. All right. Well, yep. Rotation. Pass the baton. Sometimes we laugh about the old Ed Sullivan show with the guy on there with the tall sticks and the plates on the sticks, and he's spinning the plates, holding the sticks, and then he has to run to the end of the table on a plate that's wobbling and start spinning that plate again. Well, that's kind of what the sectors are doing in this market, is it just climbs the wall of worry. As soon as one sector starts to wobble, we come in and find support. As soon as one sector seems to get a little bit ahead of itself, like the Qs did, it gets brought back to reality a little bit. But both the Qs, adhering to that text line, trend line, and the spiders. The spiders are way above that trend line. So, you know, same type of bull market upward movement, higher highs and higher lows, yet the S&Ps are getting ready to go to new highs, whereas the Qs are still trying to dig in and reestablish their trend line. So don't really have much more than that to offer. If anybody has any questions, you can, of course.
Well, Steve, you know, I was, it was just not last Friday, but the Friday before, actually, when we were in the Friday support webinar, when all of this unfolded, right?
Right.
And we were just all kind of sitting there putting our heads together, and we're like, oh, must be rotation. It's a logical sense. And then, of course, here we are not quite 5, 6 trading days into it. And of course, it makes a lot of sense now. You know, of course, we always like to say things make sense in retrospect, but seeing as how we were kind of on top of it right when it was happening, and now this is how it's playing out, and it looks, you know, it just makes a lot of sense. So nice job on all those indexes.
Sure thing. You want to take it back, or you want me to give it to you?
You know, I readjusted my resolution here, so hopefully, Mike, you'll be able to see, and everybody as well will be able to see my entire screen.
I see.
Okay. All right. So Mike, hopefully you can see the whole thing as well. It just seems to be a formatting issue. Some people have the resolution, some do not, but this one everybody should be able to see. Okay, perfect. Let me get my itinerary over here. Okay, so we're going to go into the Holly recap here. Didn't really bother putting all the stats in here because I'm about to explain them to you. When we're done with Holly, we're going to continue along with intraday range breaks, but targeting the ones with high volume and that are also at all-time highs. So by default, when we look to the left, we're not going to see any resistance. So once again, sticking to the theory, which has been working very nicely, by the way, beautiful day for these guys today, because the market, for the most part, you know, when we were in this long little range right here and we popped highs and kind of just went sideways for most of the day. One group of people may sit here and go, I couldn't find anything to trade all day. Well, of course, there are pockets that you can create for yourself to ensure that if you're the hunter, you're in the forest with lots of game and maybe just a few hunters, okay? So we're going to go into detail on how to find those things with the windows, how to identify the proper setups, and how to manage your risk. And the beautiful thing about it is it's very simple. It just takes some repetition to get into the hang of. All right, let's talk about Holly. And of course, talking about Holly and in this little range here today, whether it was the Qs or the SPYs doing their little sleepy dance all day, right? We take a look at Holly's risk on and risk off chart here today. And of course, we usually see a couple of different things happen. Risk off today, not so surprising to see her get down a little bit as she's starting to build her little intraday portfolio. And of course, not too far into the day, we get a little green action here. And not only do we get green action, but we get green action that kind of sticks around. There's none of this ebbing and flowing back and forth between negative and positive. And then, of course, once again, if we're monitoring Holly, whether we're participating or just kind of waiting for what we feel to be an opportunistic time, a lot of the times we can do that by treating her P&L intraday graph just as if it were a stock, right? So things are a little noisy right here from a statistical standpoint, but as soon as she starts digging in above this previous high, we can see that there's a little march higher. Looking at risk off today, or excuse me, risk on, I should say, a little bit different of a story. Significant little drawdown here, and though that looks pretty steep on the charts, it was only to the tune of about 80 some odd cents, I believe, down here. And then a gravitation back to flat. Nice little opportunity for almost about a 1.5 profit, and then some additional vacillations. So while the cookies were around today, it seemed to be that if you were trying to hold on for the big moves, you saw those things pulling back. So it benefited everybody to be in profit-taking mode today and exercising proper risk management, which is always the case. So let's take a look at Holly's individual trades today. So before we do that, let's just talk about the little strategy complement that she showed up with here today. So 8 strategies, 3 shorts, 5 longs. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4 strategies fired. Even had a couple of power hour shorts today from Holly, scraping out a little bit of profit in the last hour there. All right, so let's take a look at the blotter here. Once again, the way I choose to view Holly's trade data, you do have options. I like to view the all trades plotter, which is what you're seeing right here, and then be able to tell if the position is open or closed simply by looking at my exit reason column. If she's exited the trade, the reason is in there. If she's still in the trade during the day, this column will be blank until she exits. Of course, some people like to have a blotter for open positions, closed positions, or you can do the all-in-one, which is what you're seeing here. All right, so we know that going risk on today wasn't the most advantageous today, although at one point we did have the highest profit potential, but therein lies the risk of going risk on. And we've even got a specific trade today. Let's just attack that one first, because I was telling Steve earlier, we usually don't see this, but today it played out. And that was in the NEOS trade, which is notated on the chart now that I've double-clicked on it from Holly's blotter. And of course, for those of you who follow Holly, this pattern right here, it's almost starting to look like Groundhog Day on a lot of these range break patterns that Holly's calling. And we see the entry right here coinciding perfectly with the little range break there on the previous highs that had been put in earlier in the session. Holly's entry price 931. Now, why do we like these so much? Or why do I like these so much? Well, number one, Wake Up Call produced the trade, and we know that Wake Up Call coming into the session had 53.5% probability. So that's why we like Holly. That's what her superpower is, the statistically weighted entries that she delivers to us. So this thing's got statistical weight. It could go just on that merit alone, but as we start interacting with Holly and we notice, hey, not only does it have statistical weight, also coinciding with a very popular pattern, a range break, nice and simple. So we've got another positive aspect in there. And then of course, a lot of the times we can track extremely high volume as this level or shortly thereafter occurs, and that's even better. So you can start, getting 3 different attributes in line there, and of course, we get an immediate push to this upper level here. Now, I remember sitting here in real time going, okay, Holly's getting out of this trade, and we can see the darker shaded area is her risk off time in the trade. And we can see that she timed out on the NEOS trade down here. Time stop was hit. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this is perfect risk on candidate because it's doing what we thought. Now we're getting a nice little sideways action. Hopefully it's just resting up before it moves higher, right? So if we decide to go risk on, we have to remember to manage our risk accordingly. And the reason this one is so different is most of the time we see these and they head higher, but not today, not on NEOS. We're like, hey, it looks great, but guess what? Best laid plans here, sometimes they just don't work out. And then whatever caused the selling, I haven't really researched it. I know, Steve, you were probably talking about some news-driven alert. I just haven't had time to go back and look. But in any case, once we decide to go risk on, we have to preserve the capital. Maybe we've taken half off the table here, and we're adjusting our stop to break even. At the very worst case, the stop loss that was recommended. So if we were in a couple hundred shares with Holly here, and a good way to get into the feel of risk off and risk on is by doing a little bit of both if you're grappling with the concept. And that would simply be get out a half with Holly, and if it looks conducive like this one did, go ahead and keep the other half and limit your downside to either a flat or worst case scenario stop loss on this one. And we can see whatever it was that drove this one down, snap, stopped out. So I'm actually kind of glad that one like this happened today, simply because they don't always work like the ones we've seen in the past. Every system, no matter how pretty the chart is, no matter how statistically sound it looks, you will have these occurrences, but if you managed your risk accordingly, you still made a little bit of money, or you didn't lose a whole lot. Simple as that. All right, so let's take a look at SBLK today. Well, that's an interesting wick right there. All the way up here. Let's see how well we can mess the chart up here. So Holly calls it right here at 828, and boy, right off, right off to the races here, all the way up to the 857 level, and then of course, quick pullback, creating this big gnarly wick here, and then down. So we were in the money, everybody's happy. Then, in a very short amount of time, 5 minutes later, we're not only out of the money, but marching toward the stop loss. But as we always say, stop losses are there for a reason, right? So whether you jumped into 100, 200, or said, okay, now this one, I'm going to watch it, statistical probability, it's good for the day. Sometimes they go immediately, sometimes they pull one of these, and then sometimes they'll hug the line, passing back and forth through the entry. So this one was a little bit more exaggerated. Don't really know if this was just algo's gone wild or stock usually trades like this. But in any case, what do we get? We don't get stopped out. And of course, we gravitate right back up to that entry, hug it for a little bit longer, and then the march up starts. Now, had it not been for this big gnarly wick here, if the stock had acted, I guess, for lack of a better term here, more normally, then it would have set up for a nice little range break. But of course, this guy kind of ruined the party here. The funny thing is even though it stretched things out so that the true range break didn't occur over here, the funny thing is it still worked for a little bit once it got up there. So Holly got out. She got a little nervous. We can see here once that activity kicked in, and she's like, well, I was in the money, and I'm supposed to not let things go from negative to positive. So she exercised and ended up taking a 2-cent loser, and then of course 36 cents from that area. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, Holly's bringing you these things, but we have to understand she's just another way that we're displaying high quality information in the form of a statistical model. So the goal with risk off and risk on is not to pick before the day starts, I'm going to do this or that, but to try to interact with the software and these levels that we're giving you in order to hopefully capture something in between risk off and risk on. All right, so let me pay attention here. Do we have any questions that are coming up about this specific stuff?
I think we're caught up on the questions.
Can we link? Okay. All right, so while we're on the topic of Holly, many times in the past, individual users have come to either myself, Steve, or Amy, and they would ask us, can I just make Holly trade this stock? I want Holly's opinion on this stock, right? And unfortunately, at that point in time, the answer was always, not really, because that functionality just doesn't exist. Well, as you know, I'm on the developers version that Steve and I are always testing, along with Andy and the whole crew, and we see the shading on the Holly plays here. And of course, let's look at this BLL, because this little guy right here, Ball Corp, not only was it a Holly trade, but it was coming across quite a few of my other TI windows today. Okay, just want to make sure I've got the right settings here. Yeah. So here's a nice little play from Holly today, 41.54. As we can see, in the money, hugs the line, very common, and then a higher push. We can see right here is where Holly got out, and the reason, once again, time stop. Of course, there was a little bit of meat left on the bone if you're willing to accept a little bit more risk, but it's pretty much sideways action here. If we wanted to play, can we make another entry? Well, then we did have a couple little times here, ebbs and flows back and forth. Nothing really stellar stands out there after
That
the
chart
holiday.
looks kind of like the spiders today, you know, a nice pop, without the
Mhm.
gap, of course, in this one, but then just choppy sideways and then a little strength at the close. Kind of mirroring what the spiders did on that one.
All right, so let me keep my fingers crossed here. I just pulled up one of my alert windows here, and I'm going to double click on this Sherwood trade. Now keep in mind, it was not a Holly trade today.
Mm-mm.
No SHW in there. So let's see if it works.
Is it because your post and pre-market are on, perhaps?
I don't think so, because it was working earlier. Well, that's very strange. Let me do this. It could have been, maybe it had something to do with, now we're getting something up there.
Yeah, but on your intraday, I think you need to, okay, there it is. It's starting to
Okay,
show up
it
now.
took a minute it just took a minute to pop in for some reason. Okay.
A lot of calculations.
Yeah. Okay, ladies and gents. So Sherwood, of course, this is the end of the day here. So in other words, if I pulled SHW up during this last little, let's see here, that is about the last hour and a half of the market. So in the future, whenever you pull up any symbol, you're going to be shown this little shaded area, which shows you, okay, if you're going to trade this thing, this is your profit target, and this is your stop loss.
Based off the current tick, the last price.
Right, based off of the current tick from the window that you double-clicked from. Now, this doesn't look as good right now. I don't know. It's just the time, right? But as we were doing this intraday, boy, it really does just illuminate things. It's just a very quick reference. And by the way, this is not Holly doing this, but this is another layer of machine learning that we've inserted to give you more or less an AI view and to quickly paint out, okay, this is your risk, this is your profit target, to make things nice and simple so that we don't have to sit there and be so dependent upon other studies and, well, if I squint my eyes, it looks good. You know, this just kind of paints the picture for you right then and there.
It's the beginning of our technology starting to allow more input and output. You know, right now we set our filters and our alert, and then we sit back and we wait for the output, or we wait for what Holly tells us. Well, what if we really like trading a certain type of stock? I mean, just type Intel, for lack of a better word, up there, and let's just see what happens. So Intel, as soon as it comes in, okay. So see the grading shading there. The orange to the downside is your limit, is your downside, and the upside to the top would be a target. So going forward, when version 1.141 comes out, we don't have it yet, but it should be out of, you know, the production, out of the developer's version into a usable beta version, hopefully in the next week or so. But now we're able to get a little bit of input and a little bit of output using our smart stops, some machine learning, and some other super secret sauce that's going into this. And it's now giving anybody the ability to pop in any symbol, any ETF, and based on the last tick, it's going to tell you what the likely downside would be. Look at, and stop right there. Look at, no, go to your 5-minute chart and zoom in. I mean, and I'm seeing this. This is good stuff. Look at the bottom of that orange shaded area. It's looking at that wick, exactly. That's a 5-minute hammer candle, a bottoming candle, whatever you want to call it. My eyes would agree perfectly with that particular downside stop. So I'm seeing a lot of great correlations in terms of where these machine learning numbers are coming out and helping newer traders get an idea of a stock they input, getting immediate output back as to what a good risk-reward management would be. And these are not arbitrary numbers. These are some pretty good numbers. Jamie and I and Andy have looked at a lot of these charts, and the stuff that the AI and machine learning is coming up with is good. And we're really excited about that going forward. It's not meant to tease you guys here, but just want to let you know good stuff, better stuff is coming.
Right, and that's what we try to do, Steve. What's going on behind the scenes is very, very complex. But what we try to do is when we deliver the data, make it very simple, right? We're doing the heavy lifting, and then we'll make the nice pictures for everyone to look at, and, you know, it's beautiful. right? So don't know exactly when this is coming, but as Steve just said, hopefully sooner than later. We do move at a pretty quick development pace here at Trade Ideas. All right, good stuff there. So all in all, kind of just, a so-so day with Holly. She didn't knock it out of the park, but she ended up taking a little bit out on risk off on not too many trades, about 16 to be exact, actually, up 70 cents. But more importantly, if you know how to read her and play the risk on, risk off game, well, then you probably could have pulled out a little bit more, extracting something in between risk off and risk on, or by potentially biting off a little bit of both of those to get you in the swing of things. All right, so all good with Holly. We'll see what she does tomorrow. The gap between her performance and the S&P continues to widen, as it's been doing since inception. So let's see, Steve. Let's see, January, February, March, April, May, June. I guess Holly's about to be 1.5 years old. Growing up so fast. All right, guys and girls, let's do this. Let's talk about the intraday range break game and the windows that I use and that I will share today and that have shared in the past. This technique might be a little boring to some, but it's working, right? So if it's working and you're able to make good trades out of it and the byproduct ends up being a little bit of money, well then, if that's boring, then I'll take it every day, right? So what do we look for? What do we use to find these things? And how do we manage the risk? And why is it so appealing? What's the deal here? So hopefully, after we're done here, those of you who are familiar with the technique already will feel even more confident. And for those of you who are new, maybe you found something that's very simple and powerful that can help you as a new trader. So I just saw the question. Let's see, who was it? Somebody was talking about DPS.
Yeah, that's a good example. Look at that.
That one was not on my radar, but you know what? There were so many out there. This one was not on my radar. Maybe the volume requirements weren't being hit at that time, but geez.
That's pretty.
That is a beautiful chart. I'm actually envious that I didn't find this one today, but good to see that one of our users out there today maybe took advantage of it today. But hey, beautiful chart. Nice chart. All right, so let's get to the point here. And what I'm going to do, don't get mad, Holly, but I'm just going to close you out there. And number one, the range break pattern, as you can see from this DPS, is pretty obvious, right? Sometimes they're not near this tight, but boom, when we draw a line from the previous high, which, well, up until that little wick right there, that looks to be the first time that it penetrated it and then pecked around and then whoosh went. But that's what our hopes and dreams are when we're playing range breaks, is that boom, we're getting a nice pop to a daily high. It can't get out of there without hitting a new intraday high, and then a nice continuation. And of course, if you were taking this trade and you're eyeballing the risk down here, number one, in the moment, our charts would have told you what your risk should have been, but if you're eyeballing the chart, obviously it would have been right outside this range here. Okay, so yeah, that's a perfect range break. But then of course, when we look to temper our expectations, all right, we're looking at the daily here, we see the nice break here. By the way, why is this pattern so dang alluring? Well, number one, it's so simple. Here's the pattern, crack. Number two, it is fractal. Here's the same pattern as it is breaking out of this area right here. There's the wick. So not only is it breaking out here, that's a great intraday signal, but we're also breaking out here, which is always good. And then of course we have to figure out where it might bump its head. And it looks like today, right up to the bottoms of those little candles. Gets more steam tomorrow. Maybe this is the next stop. And you know, these are all over the place every day too. but they're a little bit different than, say, Sherwin-Williams today. Here's SHW. Stock comes up here, goes range bound, real sleepy. As it encroaches on that high over here, it pops through, but it does it with volume. So if we get that nice intraday signal here, we can see it works. But when we look to the left over here, we can see not only is it popping out of that little range that it's been in, but nothing to the left. Now, of course, this is no guarantee they're just going to motor up massively. But when you're eliminating any overhead resistance, well then that's points on your side as far as does it have the potential to go higher today. And as we can see, Sherwin-Williams did trudge on up nicely, look like a strong close, probably be a good stock to keep your eyes on for the next session. So that was one that I was going to showcase. Kind of got ahead of myself here, but there are a couple of other ones. But before I get to those chart patterns, or excuse me, before I get into that, I want to show the window that I'm using to find those things. So on the simple premise, stock can't get out of this range until it pops to new high. This window right here contains 3 different versions of the same alert window. And I've got it chopped up by market cap. So we can see in all of them the new high is going to be the alert. And then we've got a couple of special factors in here that ensure, because think about it from this perspective. I have a chart pattern. I know the animal that I'm hunting. I will not deviate. If I'm hunting a bear and a bunny rabbit runs by, I'm not just going to shoot it because I'm bored. I'm waiting for that specific animal. Now, this specific animal, we're taking care of the position in lifetime range right off the bat. We're also addressing volume. So see, we're not going to have to trouble ourselves when that symbol comes through and go, oh, is it out of its box? Oh, is it doing any volume? Yes. Otherwise, it wouldn't be coming through here, which is a point I like to talk about over and over and over again. Chart patterns, whether it's the range break or your other favorite chart pattern, what do most people do? They look and look and look and look for it. And when they find it, maybe it's doing good volume, maybe it's not. Maybe 10 to 15% of all stocks in the market on any given day, they're having a volume party. Whether you want to call it institutional volume or just really big volume, I guess in the end, it doesn't really matter. The volume is there. So if you find volume with your pattern, statistically speaking, you've got better odds of success. And we all know anywhere upwards above 50%, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4% makes a huge difference from a statistical model. So 3 different market caps here. The big boys above 4 billion, between 2 and 4 billion, and below a billion. That way when you're getting these hits, you're also being fed, well, these guys seem to be the movers today. You know, maybe tomorrow, today was a pretty even split across all those market caps. Everything was just kind of gyrating up. But maybe in the future, we'll notice, hey, it's the small caps that are in play, or the mid caps, or once again, it's the big caps. But in any case, all of these are exactly the same. We're just chopping it up by market cap. And this window here, because we've got the volume requirements and the all-time high factored in there, this window is not just going blotto. It's not going nuts all day. Matter of fact, but it's take the time to. Now, of course, at the close, everything's busy, but if we cycle back to around an hour into the open here, we're getting quite a few hits, but nothing that we can't keep up with. A lot of these are going to be repeats too, because as the stocks hit new highs, that's going to be a repeat of the event, one should say. But the basic premise is this. As these stocks are coming up, all we're doing is we're pulling up the stock and we're seeing if it's even something that we want to mess with, because a lot of the times when I pull up these real illiquid ones, I'm just like, And the chart might look good, but 200 shares are trading every 5 minutes, just not my cup of tea. But the bottom line is, as these are coming out, we're scanning to find, we're cherry picking. That's what we're doing here. We know that we want the patterns to be nice and tight. So we might see 10, but only one's going to be good enough to go, yes, we're going to pull the trigger here, we're going to get some skin in the game and see what happens. So let's take a look, because we could go through all of these, but as you can see, there's just so much in there today. Matter of fact, I don't even have time to showcase all the good ones, but I tried to pick, a higher price stock, medium price stock, and a lower price stock. So once I got all that done, and of course, bear with me, because once I reset my resolution, I seem to have
Looks okay.
lost a few windows. Well, for some reason my windows are hiding my individual ones that I popped out, but oh well, what a good time to show people how to do it in real time. So first, let's talk about this one, PKI. Not a hugely priced stock in the 60s, right? So I remember that one was a large cap. Of course, I can always reference the market cap right here in my single stock window, 7 billion. So obviously it was the larger one that produced this one. So what we're going to do, just to show you the entry point here and be as clear and concise as I possibly can, we're going to pull that guy out. We're going to spawn a new alert window, and we're going to paste that guy into him. Okay, so this is the big gap guy. So what I'm going to do here to isolate PKI is just simply come over here, pop this guy in. I had all these pre-configured, so I could have just easily drug it over, but somehow Jamie managed to ruin it. Okay. So now these are all the occurrences for PKI today. That was right at 7:30, so let's scroll down here. All right. Okay, bingo. All right, blue arrow right here. This is where I first stumbled onto PKI because it simply scrolled through here. I double click on it, we're right here. I look to the left, I'm like, well, we got a big wick, surprise, surprise on the open. That 66.05 wick was legit. So I'm thinking to myself, this is a very nice range break. Boom, entry signal right here, slightly after the break, but more importantly, volume kicking in, right? So a couple of different things to look at. Gap up, there's demand for the stock, puts in a high, takes a breather, nice little consolidation, back to the high, acting as a telegraph over here, and then of course a little bit of a lag before the crucial volume kicks in. So buying it anywhere in this candle right here, 66.09 low, 66.24, not too hard to push the buy button there and go, okay, well, let's see here. If I'm buying it in this candle right here, and now we're going to talk about risks. What types of risks do we want to take here? All right, it looks good, but what's my downside? Now, my rule of thumb, and of course, everybody's going to be a little bit different here, so, pick your choice, pick your methodology. But I typically look at the prior 15 minutes, 5, 10, 15, and take the lower point just right outside of that prior 15-minute range as my stop loss. That's just me. Maybe you want to go tighter. Maybe you're a little bit looser. But in any case, no worries, because it didn't even encroach at all, and we get a nice push. Just a nice push. And then it flattens out up here, does a little sideways dance into the close. So where are you going to take your money? Maybe you're intraday, maybe you got out up here, maybe you got out of some here and set a trailing stop and then got out of here, right? Or maybe you're a swing trader. So maybe you're going to take half of it up here. You're in 200. Okay, well, let's see. Wow.
Daily. Yep.
Okay.
That could be a swing trade.
Looks like that might be a pretty good risk on a swing trade, right?
To at least kick half and let the other half work, sure.
Right, because, hey, nothing for it to bump its head in. Hey, we're still in a uptrending market. Don't forget. So these are the guys that are leading the pack. makes a lot of sense to pay attention to them and look for the choice intraday range break, because guess what? It's either going to be doing that same range break or already well above it. Alrighty, let's do one more. How about this little guy? So Steve, you notice I just typed in a symbol, and for some reason, it is not popping up.
There it did. In the daily it did.
Yeah, okay, well, maybe my system has been infested by some type of gremlin. Okay, so AT&X, once again, if I did go back and extract the strategy, which was the under 1 billion, obviously this little guy right here was the range break right here. So this was pretty much already gone. So I'm thinking to myself, well, it is a range break. Is this one even worth, following from this point on, because nobody likes to chase a big green bar like that, right? So I'm like, well, I'm not going to get into it, not going to do anything, and we're going to see what it does after that. Now, once this is on your radar, and of course, we're cherry picking here, we want to get it as close to that break as we can. We don't want to chase it, Maybe, as soon, I would just had no desire to jump in and chase this, but it is worth watching. And of course, pops a high, what does it do? It goes sideways for a little bit more. Of course, look how nice and tight this little break was right here from these highs. So not only do we have a penetration over here because the buyer's not done here, buyer's identified here, whoever the guy managing the order is here, don't know if he's going to do too well from an institutional standpoint. That's a big market impact, but then again, this is a new issue, relatively new issue, and it's doing 1 million shares a day. It looks like 1.9, 1.3, not quite 1 million today. In any case, just because you didn't participate in this one doesn't mean that this one didn't look really good, because look how low your risk is. You wait for the calm part and you can identify it and take advantage on the second run. But a lot of the times, with PKI, getting it through here and then the second time right here, if you identify the buyer early on, a lot of the times there is first opportunities and then second opportunities to make even more on that leverage position, because what was happening in PKI today? Other than the general rule, more buyers than sellers, right? Well, I'd probably go out on a limb here and say, based on the relative volume that was going on today, that PKI was probably being purchased by institutional type entities. And that's the whole premise behind this high volume strategy, is to find those simple patterns where the institutions are playing and just jumping on. I want to get drugged by your coat heels.
The relative volume on that one is awesome on there in your single chart. It was 5.2. It was doing 5 times regular volume, exactly.
Right. So when you see these guys early on doing the big volume, and by the way, if they weren't doing big 1 minute volume, they'd never be coming through here. So this is an extremely high quality information stream that was only showing you a very small percentage of tradable stocks today. But this hunting ground right here is one that is very fertile and it's not overloaded with hunters.
Well, speaking of that, you do have a couple people wanting to get a copy of that, as you expected. So I think you were planning on dropping the cloud link into the chat window for that one, the family.
I'm going to drop
Turbo family
in, and then I'm also going to accompany it with a couple of other companion windows. So don't worry, no sweat. I'm going to drop all these in. So not only are you going to get this guy, all right, but you're going to get this guy, which is the companion window. Because, gee, look, these are all the guys that are up there, but here's the kicker. Let's say the market gets sleepy tomorrow or whatever, and things kind of slow down. You're not seeing anything come through here, but you're looking and you go, well, these are the leaders, and I wonder if some of them are looking nice and tight on the range that's taking place currently, and they might be knocking on that door pretty soon. And by the way, Clorox today was a really nice one today too, going through here. But during the day, if you want to try to play the prediction game, because here we're reacting as the range break is occurring. But if we want to get predictive and go, okay, I want to find the ones that are just below their high that look real good, because if you can find them while they're in this area right here or right here, you can go, if it gets up here, I want to go ahead and know about it. So if we find them based on this list and find the ones that are nice and snuggly, then we can start playing the range break game as soon as we see a good one and go, okay, well, if we find it from the top list here, all we have to do is draw our line and or set our price alert, right? Of course, the price alert is going to tell you as soon as it gets there. And then we could look at the volume and see if we want to participate. Or if we have 5-minute volume on our top list or in our single stock window, well, it's right there for us. And of course, sometimes they go without volume. Sometimes everybody's doing it, right? So the most powerful manifestation is reacting as the break is occurring with the high volume. And then if we want to get predictive, we can target by position and range, find the nice tight ones, and then put those price alerts in.
When you say target, you mean sort by, just clarifying that. Sort by position and range so you can see which ones are really close.
Right. So I just resorted, let's just do it by something random, volume, right? But let's say it's 2 hours to the close, and I'm thinking to myself, okay,
who's near highs?
I want to target some that might be just hovering really beneath the high with a nice tight consolidation. So I would resort like this, and anyone that you see with a slight gap, if it's all the way to the right, it's hitting highs. But if it's got a little piece of daylight right there, then that means it's close to its high, but not quite at its high. And then you just go through and peruse them, and see, okay, well, if I would have, found ROL while it was down here, we can see there was a little bit of time towards the close where it busted out and you could have made a little bit of coin, but you wouldn't have known about it unless you set the price alert based on a little predictive hunting via the top list. So I hope that makes sense right there. So I'll be sure and I'll drop all of these in here, and looking at the clock.
It's a good time to do it.
It is, yeah, wow.
Yeah, somebody was asking what Jamie's going to share. Do you have to have the premium subscription for this? No, not at all. This will work on your standard subscription. Price alerts will just be, you'll have to set those on your own if you don't have our premium version. Even though Scott teased you guys at the beginning, in our new versions coming out, we're going to start allowing the standard version people to play around with 10 price alerts or so, just to kind of get familiar with them. But no, what he's putting in there is 100% usable and available for anybody who subscribes to Trade Ideas.
Very true, very true. And also, ladies and gentlemen, on Twitter, I am QuantBot, and I'm constantly, if I see a good consolidation like this, I'll tweet it out. So that's a good way for you guys to kind of follow along, assuming I'm in the chair and have time to do so. But like, you can go back and look at a ton of them that were generated today to help you get a feel for the setup. All right, well, I'm dropping these into the chat, and Scott, if you're ready, we're ready for you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, just a couple things as we're closing out. As promised, there will be a discount code, and I also want to remind everyone that we have a podcast that comes out on Fridays. We just released one this last Friday, so you should subscribe, get that episode, and then stay tuned for this coming Friday's episode. To find the podcast, just search for Trade Ideas Podcast inside the favorite app that you have for listening to podcasts. It's pretty easy. And then just subscribe to it. You'll get the new episodes automatically at that point, or you can download the archive versions. Just wanted to point that out. We also have Brokerage Plus available for those of you that are interactive brokerage clients. If you're using interactive brokerage and you have our newest recommended beta that you can get at trade-ideas.com/beta, Current one is 4.0.136. You can connect that to your interactive brokerage account and use Brokerage Plus to automate or gray box or black box trade, or you could just right click and trade directly from Trade Ideas through your interactive brokerage account. So when you get the newest version and you want to do that connection, you can search for the videos inside our YouTube account, or just email info@trade-ideas.com to learn how to integrate Brokerage Plus with your IB for trading. There's a code as promised. We have a discount code today, and that's GRAIL, G-R-A-I-L, all caps. It is case sensitive. And that's good for 15% off your first month or year of Trade Ideas. And once you become an active subscriber, you're eligible to get your full hour of one-on-one training with Jamie or Steve or Andy. So once you become a subscriber, we do recommend you get a little bit used to the software, watch some of the help videos, go to some of the webinars and training room occurrences. But then when you have a list of questions, make sure you've scheduled your training. It's a full hour. Just go to the support section, click on training, and pick a good time of day, and you'll get that head start. It's a real great way to get oriented. And if you have any questions, email us info@trade-ideas.com, or you can reach out to Steve or Jamie directly. Jamie is QuantBot on Twitter, Steve's Today Trader. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll have the recording up later on. Have a good one. And
All right.
see you all in the trade
Thanks,
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow for the trade of the week, same time, 5 Eastern.
Bye-bye.